Welcome to Casey Cares. We're the voice of Kansas City nonprofits, and we share the section of the nonprofit and business communities, enhancing the quality of life in Kansas City for our residents and our visitors. This Casey Cares segment was brought to you by the Ewing, Marion Kaufman Foundation, www.kaufman.org. I'm Ruth Baum-Biggis. The Greater Kansas City Community Foundation is a rock in the philanthropic world. Founded in 1978 from a small group of philanthropists collecting $200 in a hat. Today, the foundation manages over $8 billion in assets and is ranked in the top 1% of community foundations across the country. The foundation helps individuals, families, and companies give to charities and build philanthropic legacies through donor advised funds and other charitable giving opportunities. Well, today, we're going to have an Ask the Expert, and we've invited Mariah Roady back on the show, and we're going to talk about a very interesting opportunity. It's called agency funds. So, Mariah, welcome back as our expert.
Well, thanks. It's great to be back with you, Ruth. Thanks for having me.
I am going to give you that opportunity to go ahead and plug the foundation in any way and talk a little bit about the many things that you do offer in the community for people in the world of philanthropy.
So really, our job at the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation is to help people and organizations set aside assets for charities that they care about. So in most cases, we're working with families or organizations, individuals who want to support their favorite nonprofits and want some sort of vehicle to be able to do that. And so we facilitate that here at the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation. And we have about 8,000 donor advised funds.
Wow.
Which is wild. Donor advised funds.
Wow.
Which is wild. The majority of those are donor advised funds. But really, we're here today to talk about something that's just for nonprofits, which are our agency funds. Yes. And we have about 400 nonprofits who have taken out agency funds with us here at the Community Foundation, and with nearly about 500 million in assets. So it is a significant body of work there.
All right, let's start at the very beginning to take a line from a musical theater song.
Let's do it.
What is an agency fund?
So really, when you think about an agency fund, it is that long-term investment fund for that nonprofit organization. So you might hear different words like endowment, quasi-endowment. We use those kind of interchangeably with agency fund. So it's really those organizations who want to take out an investment fund to support their organization for the long term. If I could distill it in a few words, that's essentially what an agency fund is.
Why would a nonprofit want to do this rather than just going out another way or sticking it in a bank or something like that?
That's a great question, because really these funds, these are your reserve or rainy day funds that are invested. So lots of organizations have their daily operating funds within their financial institution, and that's great. These are those funds that maybe are not needed for day-to-day operations, but for the future of the organization. And so the benefit of working with a provider to establish an agency fund or an endowment is the fact that it's invested. So those dollars are actually growing over time. And we've seen remarkable returns for many of our agency fund holders. And they sure like when those numbers get bigger over time and they're kind of forgotten, set over there. And then they have more money for when they do need it or when there's a big project or a need that happens.
Do you have any figures or stats on what percentage of nonprofits establish an agency fund? I mean, we know we've got between 8,000 and 10,000 nonprofits in the Kansas City region.
So that's a great question. And I am not for sure what that percentage is. I know that, we have just at our community foundation, we have about 400 of those agency funds, but we're one provider of many. So I would have to do some deeper research on that one for you.
Probably not as many as should,
Yeah.
possibly.
Well, it's hard. Coming from a nonprofit development background, having additional funds, that's a luxury for many organizations. And so whenever an organization is able to, it's a great opportunity to have that security and comfort of knowing that you've got that fund set aside in case you need it. I actually have an example of where this came very handy for an organization, and it was a couple summers ago, in the middle dog days of summer, super hot, and I received a kind of frantic phone call from a nonprofit leader saying, "Oh my gosh, our HVAC just went out."
Oh
And
my.
for a large commercial building that has hundreds of folks going through it every day, that is my salary plus some change. So
Right.
yeah, and that organization, they had an agency fund with us and have had an established fund for many years, and we were able to work with that organization and follow their guidelines from their establishing documentation and wire a check to them that next day. And
Wow.
I offered to send them popsicles, but they said the cash would be enough to get the HVAC.
I don't know. I think I would have taken the popsicles too.
I tell you, I'm surprised that they declined that offer, but who knows? They got the money, so maybe they'll buy their own popsicles in addition to an HVAC.
So let's dig into what the basics are. What does a nonprofit have to do to establish an agency fund with the community foundation?
Yeah. So it's really a pretty simple process. We have an agreement that we'll have the organization complete that just lists basic information about the organization and then how they'd like those funds to be invested. We have custom mixes here at the Community Foundation that an organization could choose from, or they can actually develop their own custom mix. And either way, we are happy to work with them to invest those funds that meet their goals. So first, we will fill out that agreement, work with them in really understanding what their goals are, what their risk tolerance looks like, if they have any immediate cash needs. We take all of these things into consideration and provide guidance on maybe a strategy that might fulfill what the organization is seeking to do. And then that can be changed within any time. And we're really flexible and want to make this as easy and as positive as of an experience for nonprofit agency fund holders, because working for a nonprofit, you wear 17 different hats on
Yes.
any given day. So we want to take some of that stress away in this avenue for those organizations. So once that organization completes that agreement and lets us know how they want those funds to be invested, then they can contribute assets into the fund whenever they're ready. And so you can, it can happen kind of sporadically or all at once, whatever works for that organization and their timeline. And then once we receive those assets, we'll invest them how they'd like us to invest them. And then when the nonprofit needs funds, it can request a grant back to the organization, and we'll follow their establishing document and their approval process. And so we're really kind of the historians as well, and making sure that we have crossed our T's and dotted our I's to make sure that we're in compliance with what the organization originally said. And then we will send those dollars right back to the organization to do whatever they need to do.
So is there a minimum amount to establish an agency fund?
No, that's a great question. There's no minimum amount to open an agency fund, but we do have a minimum administrative fee of $250, an annual fee. And so because of that, we generally recommend starting an agency fund at $25,000 because that doesn't exceed that 1% fee that we charge for our great service and support. So many nonprofits still find that that's significantly lower than what they would pay with an outside investment manager managing their fund. So we try to be responsive and as helpful as we can.
So I did a big gulp at $25,000 for some nonprofits. That's can be like a lot of their programming costs, et cetera. So it sounds like you would work with a nonprofit
Yes.
if it's less, but that's recommended from your vantage point.
Of course, we have many organizations that are below that $25,000 mark, and we support them just as we would the organizations that have millions of dollars in funds with us. The only reason that we suggest that 25,000 minimum is just so that the organization is breaking even with that administrative fee.
What are some of the investment options? Let's say you decide you're going to do this, and we're filling out all the forms. What are the things that the nonprofit can consider in that investment mix?
So we have a ton of different ways that an organization could invest because we want to be flexible, and what is right for one organization or one person might not be right for another organization or another person. And so our team is really a listening ear and can provide some guidance based on what that nonprofit's goals are and what they share with us. But we can some of our current polls are in our domestic equity, international equity, short-term fixed income, intermediate-term fixed income. And if you want more real investment details, I'm going to loop in someone with more investment experience on that one.
That's okay. Where would be the best place for someone to go kind of start this process? Let's put that out there right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can do that. We can do that here at the Community Foundation, and nonprofits can visit growyourgiving.org and then go to the nonprofit organization section and click Open an Agency Fund. Try to make it as simple as possible. So open an agency fund, you click that, and then you will get a follow-up from someone on our team to help you navigate the process and provide just some information about how these funds can be structured. So that way we're supporting the organization and meeting their objectives.
You came from the development world of nonprofits, so I think you are expert extraordinaire, hopefully, to answer this next question.
Oh, I hope.
Can a nonprofit fundraise to start an endowment? What's kind of the kosher rules of, doing that?
That is a great question. So I have to be honest. So I have not been in development in a couple of years, and the landscape has just changed in fundraising in general. And so we're really experts in helping donors with their philanthropy. And so I would refer anyone who has specific questions about endowment fundraising, some of our friends, our local friends here in town, like Nonprofit Connect or the Midwest Center for Nonprofit Leadership, to provide some additional education around fundraising for endowments, because it is a different ask. It's asking for tomorrow versus today. And there's just different nuances that come with that.
We're talking with Mariah Roady. She is our Ask the Expert today. We're talking about agency funds. Is there any reason a nonprofit shouldn't be looking at this kind of an option for themselves?
One of the things that, is required is having those long-term assets available to invest. And so, if it's a small organization that maybe is really using all of their resources for day-to-day operating, it might not be the right time to open an agency fund because they need every dollar to support their mission. So this is really maybe for those more established organizations that do have the capacity for managing long-term investments and setting them aside and maybe don't need them today. Thinking of an example here. Yes, one time shortly after I started, there was a nonprofit organization who received an unexpected gift from a donor who had sold a property, and that donor and their family, they wanted to support the organization that had been so meaningful to them throughout their lives. And so what they did is they said to the nonprofit organization, we want to give you proceeds from the sale of this property to use towards whatever you want for your organizational mission. And so that nonprofit said, wow, we've got buku bucks here, but we don't have any capital campaigns or anything where we need a big cash investment right now. And so what they ended up doing was, since they had that unexpected gift, they opened an agency fund to be able to allow those funds to grow for the future. And then whenever they do want to do something like a capital campaign or have a new program they'd like to offer, they've got the security and comfort of knowing that they have those dollars set aside that have grown significantly in the last couple of years and can be able to do those things on their timeline.
Do you have an average rate of return on agency funds? How does that look?
That is a great question. So that it really depends on how you are invested with us and what you've chosen for your investment allocations. However, we are across the board, usually a little bit above fair market.
Well, that's good to know.
It is good to know.
There's a benefit right there.
Yes. And I think one of the great benefits that I see is being able to actually talk to somebody here and look at your fund history and understand what has happened over the last several years. And maybe now is the time to invest in a more aggressive approach, since maybe the organization doesn't have any upcoming cash needs and wants to maybe change from a more conservative model to more aggressive to see those greater yields and returns. And so those are conversations we have all of the time, our investment team and our agency fund team with organizations, just to help them navigate this opportunity and really leverage what makes the most sense for what they're trying to achieve.
If you know of a donor in your donor base who's, let's say, has I'll just put it crassly, a fair pot of money, they have a donor advised fund, is it okay to reach out to them and say, hey, we're going to establish, would you consider designating funds to create our endowment fund?
As a former fundraiser, yes, I would reach out to those donors, especially those donors. Now I'm putting my fundraising hat back on just for a minute, but those long-term donors who maybe have been really supportive of your organization for a long time and really support your mission, those might be folks that I would reach out to and put on my top prospect list of considering an endowment, because really that ensures that the organization is able to thrive tomorrow as well as today. So I would be looking at those historical supporters who also have a legacy within the organization and want it to succeed for future days.
Now, you alluded earlier in our conversation about how shifting sands and whatnot. What are you seeing and hearing out there for nonprofits?
In what way? With just funding in general?
I think funding in general, and political times being what they are, not to be pro-con, but just what they are. What are you all kind of hearing out there in the stratosphere of philanthropy?
That's a great question. And, as it pertains to agency fund work, I'm going to tell you, we've seen a lot of grants go back to organizations upon their request, because there has been uncertainty with federal funding, state funding. And a lot of those organizations are thanking their lucky stars that they have a fund like this. And we're seeing more of those grants being requested to go back out to support their missions. So that's kind of a trend that I've seen across the nonprofit sector. I have actually also seen several nonprofits reach out just to inquire about establishing an agency fund to really plan for the days ahead in case there are additional changes for their sector within the nonprofit landscape's funding, who are interested in wanting to get ahead of things and have kind of that rainy day fund in case things change, as we continue to see them change almost on an hourly basis.
Right.
I've seen more inquiries about what can we do as an organization to position ourselves in a strong place for the future.
Digging in a little deeper there. So what are the opportunities that nonprofits can engage with you all beyond the agency fund? Are there other opportunities and things that we being nonprofits, access and have that kitchen cabinet, so to speak, through the foundation?
Absolutely. So one thing that if you're a nonprofit, I'll encourage you to ask for this anytime you meet with someone from our team, is your grant giving history report. And we can run that anytime. And it dates almost to the date that I was born. So it goes back 30 years at least. And it's our those reports for nonprofits, we can pull those and it shows anyone that has used their donor advised fund to contribute to the organization. And that can be a really valuable list because, as we know, there's turnover in every workforce, but it is significantly higher in nonprofit work. And I think that's just the nature of the business. But we have seen a lot of different leaders kind of change their scope of things and want to look at different opportunities.
Do you all run a boot camp to talk about some of these things? I'm just thinking that'd be kind of cool to say, I'm going to go learn in the Community Foundation and all that you offer.
You know, we do offer several different opportunities through the course of the year. Most of those are catered for donors and helping them through their philanthropy. But we do offer different webinars so that nonprofits who are so busy, nonprofit leaders who are so busy doing so many things can access those recordings later. And so we have a ton of different opportunities and those resources on our website to further familiarize yourself with our work and really how our funds can be structured and just a little bit more about who we are and what we do.
And that's growyourgiving.org.
Thank you, Ruth. Yes, it is.
So check it out. I mean, and what I think it's great about you're putting them up there, making them available is you're right. Nonprofit leaders, staff, whoever, it's, you're so pressed for time, fulfilling your mission and the day to day that at least if you want it, 1 a.m. in the morning, you can watch that webinar and not feel like you've, had to miss a presentation. Although I know oftentimes live is considered best, but the fact that you have a library of information there for anyone to explore.
Sometimes what I would do is I would listen in on different podcasts like yours, Ruth, and over my lunch hour or when I am answering emails, just to even have some of that in the background. I would be thinking about things and being able to, reference some of those things that I learned.
Agency funds sound like a great opportunity for a nonprofit to get in without too much complexity. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, we try to keep it as easy and flexible as possible because this should be easy. It should be easy to set up a fund or whatever to help your organization for tomorrow, especially knowing that today is just, it's gone before you blink.
Yep.
There's so many things and so many needs and so many hats. But, I think that I really think 17. I think a development director or executive director has no less than 17 hats that they have to wear, sometimes within the day, sometimes within the afternoon. You never know. And so we want to make this as easy as possible. And that's why our team is available and responsive so that we can help you walk through, from conception of thinking through an agency fund. And maybe, there have been conversations where we've talked to organizations and, this hasn't been the right fit for where they are and what they're looking to do. There's an organization that was really interested in an agency fund, but had a big capital campaign that they were launching within a couple months. And so really we said, we're not maybe the best opportunity here because you have these cash needs coming up right away. So that money wouldn't have an opportunity to really grow through the investment. And so we're transparent and really try to be a good guiding resource for organizations as they're thinking through their strategy for their investments.
Is Kansas City a unique community in all the kinds of foundations and organizations that we have? We always think we're great, but
we're the best in the world, Ruth, but that's just me.
Yay. Are we unique, or are other cities also, have these kinds of organizations like a community foundation?
Yeah, so other communities do have offerings just like the one that we've been talking about today, and other financial institutions do as well. So, when nonprofit organizations receive checks from Fidelity, Schwab 360, from the Community Foundation, whatever that provider is, I needed this reminder when I was in development, is that it's not that institution that is giving you that grant or whatever. It is really that donor who's using their donor advised fund through that financial entity to contribute to your organization. And so I would just remind nonprofit leaders and development folks to look at those checks extra carefully to see who most donors will include their information. There are some donors that like to keep their gifts anonymous, and we respect however anyone wants to give. We want dollars to go out to charities and people that could benefit from them. So I just say that to remind folks that it is the donor that's making those gifts, and that, if they provided their contact information, development hat back on, you should be following up with those folks and really stewarding those relationships. Because if they've invested in you once or a few times, possibility of them doing more in the future, especially with increased engagement, is pretty high.
Mariah, you've been great as always. We dug into the agency funds. I know we'll have you back for many other important topics in the nonprofit. So thanks for spending time with us.
Yes, thank you for having me. I always love seeing you and getting to chat about all nonprofit everything.
And thank you for joining us for KC Cares. We're produced by a nonprofit that's called Charitable Communications. And this KC Cares segment was brought to you by the Ewing, Marion Kaufman Foundation, www.kaufman.org. Now, to find out all kinds of information about us, you can visit our website, which is kccaresonline.org, and spread the love. You'll find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio, and Instagram at KC Cares Online. And don't forget, Saturday mornings at 8 a.m., you can catch us on ESPN 1510 a.m. and 94.5 FM. Thank you for joining us on